Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Jeff Colvin.
Okay, back in the room, back in our seats. Time to resume. It's time now for another one of these spotlight discussions that we started with yesterday. Short presentations by inspiring people on really important topics. And I am delighted to say that our next spotlight presentation will be presented by Katie Couric, anchor of the CBS Evening News. If you are from the United States or have spent any time in the United States, you know all about Katie Couric. In fact, you probably feel as if you know her personally. For more than 20 years, her reporting has been famous on American television, all kinds of programs, Dateline, 60 Minutes, The Today Show for many years. She has interviewed 4 U.S. presidents, every world leader you can think of, Kofi Annan, Tony Blair, Saudi Crown Prince Abdullah, his first American TV interview. On and on this goes. She herself made history of a kind when she became the first female sole anchor of one of our evening news broadcasts on one of the 3 major television networks we have in the United States. All of this on top of the fact that she has given countless hours, raised millions of dollars to finance research on something that she is passionate about, which is eliminating colon cancer. Time magazine has named Katie one of the world's 100 most influential people. We're honored that she is joining us here today. Please welcome Katie Couric.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you, Jeff, for that very kind introduction, and Archbishop Tutu and so many distinguished guests here today. You know, the last speech I gave was to the graduates of Edward R. Murrow High School in Brooklyn last Thursday in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm feeling a little more pressure speaking before you all today, but it really is a tremendous honor to be part of the Fortune Times CNN Global Forum, to stand before so many accomplished world leaders and hear such critically important global perspectives. You know, given the fact that so many talented and experienced individuals and thought leaders are gathered in one place, made me think about the things that we all have in common, the things that bring us together. And of course, one is sports. To be here during the World Cup is an amazing experience, as long as you're not seated next to the vuvuzelas or your team loses, as mine did last night. Although I have to say, I just arrived here in Cape Town yesterday afternoon when I ran into Doug Band, who is President Clinton's chief of staff, who mentioned that they were heading to the U.S. game outside Johannesburg and they had some room. Would I like to come? So I ended up watching the World Cup with not only President Clinton, but Mick Jagger and, of course, Wolf Blitzer, which was the real highlight. So we had a great time, and it was an unforgettable evening, although, as I said, I was sorely disappointed the U.S. lost. But having so many people together made me think about, as I said, what we have in common. And I started thinking about sports. Sports, obviously, is something that takes place on the ultimate level playing field. It's a great equalizer and a unifying force. You don't get a red card simply because of your socioeconomic status. Everyone who has the ability, the passion, and the work ethic to be at the top of his or her game can participate. And all those moving pieces are working together for a common goal or goals. Your ultimate responsibility is to be there for everyone else. How many times have you heard the expression, after all, there is no I in team? Sports unites fans as well, blended together in an exotic sea of faces like one giant Benetton ad. Black, white, red, yellow, and brown, people forget their differences and suddenly find themselves in the same boat. You and your neighbor, who perhaps wouldn't be caught dead at the same party, find that you have something very important in common. You embrace a perfect stranger after a nail-biting loss, or nail-biting victory, rather, or console each other following a disappointing loss. Vince Lombardi, one of the great coaches of American football, put it this way: people who work together will win, whether against complex football defenses or the problems of modern society. What other common goals make our differences disappear? Well, one is the desire to be healthy, to lead long, productive, and fulfilling lives. There are so many enemies in this world that keep us from achieving that: good health, HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, or the other communicable diseases that are so devastating in much of Africa and other parts of the developing world. These diseases have exacted a terrible toll, and they demand our continued attention. But the disease that I have personally witnessed, that insidiously, then overtly ravages too many victims and cuts short too many lives, is the one poised at some point this year to overtake cardiovascular disease as the #1 cause of death worldwide, and that is cancer. This year alone, 13 million people around the world will hear those 3 dreaded words: you have cancer. 13 million people. Collect them all in one place and they would fill the city of Lagos or Los Angeles. And I believe that qualifies as a crisis. Almost 8 million people will die from cancer this year. That's as if every person in London or Lima simply vanished from the face of the earth. According to a report commissioned by our colleagues at the Lance Armstrong Foundation, more people around the world die from cancer every year than from HIV/AIDS, malaria, and TB combined. Cancer has become an equal opportunity disease. Ironically, it was once more prevalent in the developed world because of the riches that accompany modernity that lead to obesity, alcoholism, and smoking. Those unhealthy symbols of wealth, coupled with longer lifespans, made more developed nations more vulnerable. In fact, at one time, more than 80% of cancer cases were diagnosed in more developed countries. But now there, in fact, is a troubling trend. The developing world is catching up. Those nations now account for more than half of new cancer cases. By the end of this decade, 2/3 of the projected 17 million new cases will occur in countries that are ill-equipped to deal with them, and Africa will have the largest proportionate increase. Because of late diagnosis and inadequate health care, these cancer patients are more likely to die than those in wealthier countries. In Africa, for example, every 10 people diagnosed this year, 8 people die. The spread of cancer has a ripple effect. Dr. Ala Alwan of the World Health Organization recently said, "The rise of cancer creates an enormous burden on health systems all around the world. But it's not just a health challenge. It undermines economic growth and acts as a chronic poverty trap for the poorest countries." This mission of understanding and eradicating cancer is a very personal one for me. My story begins in April of 1997. My husband, Jay Monahan, was diagnosed at age 41 with stage 4 colon cancer. Our daughters at the time were 5 and 1. It was an earth-shattering and life-changing diagnosis. And ever since that day, my life has been divided into 2 distinct periods, BC and AC, before and after cancer. Motivated by fear and desperation, I learned to speak the language of this disease, especially the second leading cancer killer of men and women in the US. My reading materials became Lancet and Oncology Today. I became fluent with terms like anti-angiogenesis, monoclonal antibodies, and immunotherapy. I called medical institutions, pharmaceutical companies, and biotech firms as far away as Israel, searching for some kind of magic bullet that would make my husband well, or at least keep his cancer at bay. I never found it, and Jay died on a cold morning in January, 9 months after his diagnosis. 2 years later, cancer struck my family again. My older sister, Emily, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She was a rising star in politics, and many expected her to be the first female governor of Virginia. But that would never happen. She died at 54 in October of 2001, leaving behind her husband, 2 sons, her parents and siblings, and her extended family of constituents. Jay used to say that I was born on a sunny day, but now I wondered if the clouds would ever part. But I did decide I had to do something to spare other families the pain I had endured. So I joined forces with the Entertainment Industry Foundation, the charitable arm of the film and television industries that advocates for a number of important causes. We established the National Colorectal Cancer Research Alliance to raise awareness and badly needed research dollars. When I told you this cause was very personal to me, I wasn't kidding. I felt so strongly about it, I decided to televise my own colonoscopy. In addition to allowing my viewers to see a side of me they never expected to see, it also saved lives by demystifying the process and encouraging people to discuss this procedure with their doctors. Finally, I established the J. Monahan Center for Gastrointestinal Health at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell Medical Center. The Monahan Center provides seamless, comprehensive, and compassionate care for all kinds of gastrointestinal cancers. Its wonderful staff treats the patient, not the disease, and helps entire families cope with the myriad of issues attendant to a cancer diagnosis. After talking relentlessly about colon cancer for 8 years, I grew slightly concerned about my colon obsession and decided to expand my efforts to include all cancers. Stand Up to Cancer, a national grassroots movement, has raised more than $100 million so cancer can be attacked using a whole new research paradigm. The cornerstone of our fundraising efforts was a 2008 televised special aired simultaneously by the 3 major US networks and around the world. We're due to host another event this September 10th, which will be available on even more outlets. The money we raised is then used for grants that are given to dream teams of doctors and scientists from different hospitals and academic centers. They are required to collaborate, to share their wisdom and expertise so better therapies can be developed and provided to patients in a much more expedient manner. The only competition for these experts and scientists and researchers is the race against time. These teams have rigorous milestones which they need to meet and are accountable to a scientific advisory committee led by Dr. Phil Sharp of MIT, a Nobel laureate, who is one of the preeminent cancer researchers in this country, in the United States. These key players are striving for victory every single day, just like those at Greenpoint Stadium here in Cape Town. There is no I in these teams either. There is some encouraging news on the science front. Our growing knowledge of the basic biology of cancer, combined with breathtaking advances in technology, are in fact enabling us to push back at this disease in ways we never could before. In the US, there are a number of cancers that have been moved from the almost certain killers column to diseases that can be cured or at least managed. Vaccines have been developed against virus-related forms of cancer, like cervical cancer, which is now close to elimination back home, but still takes a terrible toll in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Asia. The Global Coalition to Stop Cervical Cancer is committed to promoting the effective introduction and use of the HPV vaccine and a new rapid diagnostic test in developing countries. Because all the breakthroughs in the world mean absolutely nothing if the world doesn't have access to them. We must demand that life-saving or life-prolonging advances are widely available to everyone touched by this disease. Creative solutions, by the way, need not be costly. There's a wonderful program right here in South Africa. Breast cancer is a leading cause of death for women here, largely because it is diagnosed so late. But a consortium of groups have launched 2 mobile mammography and breast check units that travel throughout Johannesburg, giving mammograms, distributing easy-to-understand educational materials, and doing on-site demonstrations of how to do your own breast self-exam. And just as I tried to remove the stigma of colons and colon cancer, we must continue to educate people all over the world because ignorance could be their worst enemy. Because of misconceptions, misinformation, or lack of information altogether, as well as shame, too many people do not get the treatment they need and deserve. Cancer is not a curse. It is not untreatable. In fact, the American Cancer Society sponsors a program in Latin America where cancer survivors help the general population understand cancer isn't a death sentence and it's nothing to be ashamed of. What else can be done around the world? We need funding for more research, especially the kind that helps prevent cancer and delivers help to patients as quickly as possible. Research that will include developing tumor and tissue banks to support the research and more fully develop cancer registries. We need global alliances to share scientific information and breakthroughs in the lab and in patients. We need effective public education campaigns against smoking and tobacco. We need more trained cancer care personnel, so that means more training facilities as well. We need an increase in equipment and technology like imaging units and endoscopy suites, so they're available to patients in their communities. We need more widespread access to affordable drugs. And for those of you who are corporate executives and you have a say in how your company's philanthropic dollars are spent, please consider the fight against cancer in some way, whether that's investing in research or the types of public awareness programs I've just mentioned. I realize all of this is a very tall order. We have, as Robert Frost wrote, miles to go before we sleep. Some of these initiatives will require financial resources, others the political will to change policy, still others the national will to change behavior. It will take a sustained, long-term commitment, and perhaps what I'm about to tell you will help get the ball rolling. Our partner in Stand Up to Cancer, the American Association for Cancer Research, which includes more than 30,000 scientists from all over the world, has offered to host a special session on global cooperation at its annual meeting next year. I hope you'll encourage representatives from your home countries to attend. The great American writer, scientist, inventor, and diplomat Ben Franklin once said, "While we may not be able to control all things that happen to us, we can control what happens inside us." Well, sometimes, Ben, but wiping out cancer really does begin at home, your home. So while we wage an international assault on this widespread killer, you can start by taking care of yourselves. Get the recommended screenings. If you smoke, you should quit. You should exercise, obviously, and eat right, because simply doing those things will dramatically decrease your risk of this disease. And then spread the word. Go back to your countries. Talk the talk and walk the walk. One of our most effective weapons in beating this disease is simply making sure people are aware of it. And become a foot soldier in this war by demanding that progress anywhere. They sound like they're having a good time back there, don't they? Demand that progress anywhere lead to progress everywhere. That safeguarding our health is a right and not a privilege. Thank you so much for inviting me here today, and I truly believe the team we have gathered here can together make a real difference. Thank you.